What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, the Fight Gloves, you know where they are, UFC picks. UFC Ronda Rousey versus Liz Carmouche is coming up this weekend as the fights are on Saturday. It's a good fight card top to bottom, of course topped off by history in the making, the first ever women's fight in the history of the UFC. Let's get to taking the fight picks. On the prelim card, we start in the welterweight division with a couple of Strikeforce transplants. Nashawn Burrell taking on Yuri. Now, Nashawn Burrell, 8-2 on his pro career, of course making his UFC debut, had a successful record of 3-1 in Strikeforce. He was TKO'd in his last fight, however, by Chris Spang. Now, 6 of his 8 pro wins and 1 of his 2 losses there has come by way of knockout. He's a stand-up fighter. He's got suspect takedown defense. I think he only stuffs something in the line of 1 in 6 takedowns against him, so takedown defense is really got to work on. Now, Yuri, on the other hand, 6-1 on his pro career, also making his UFC debut, lost his only Strikeforce fight in a decision against Quinn Mulhern. Now, 5 of his 6 pro wins have been finishes. He's got 2 knockouts and 3 submissions, and the key to this fight for Yuri is going to be grapple. He's got to get Nashawn Burrell down, beat him up, and more than likely attempt a submission. However, I actually like Nashawn Burrell in this fight. I think his fight style translates better into the octagon, if that makes any sense. I'm going to take Nashawn Burrell to beat Yuri by knockout or technical knockout inside the second round. Sticking with the welterweights, we have John Manley taking on Neil Magny. John Manley, 7-1 on his pro career, making his UFC debut. He's won 2 straight decisions just in lower, local promotions. It's his first fight since 2011, as he was a castmate on The Ultimate Fighter Season 16, and 4 of his 7 professional wins have come by way of decision, so he's no stranger to going all 3 rounds. Neil Magny, 7-1 on his pro career as well, also making his UFC debut. He was decisioned in his last fight by Daniel Sandman down in a local promotion. 4 of his 7 pro wins have been finishes. He's got 2 knockouts and 2 submissions. He is an unbeaten 3-0 when the fight goes the distance, training with Miguel Torres MMA. Now, in a fight like this with 2 guys who appear to have very similar numbers, if not styles, I tend to like to take the guy that has proven himself to be able to finish fights more often, as well as be more durable when the fight goes to a decision. Now, yes, John Manley has more decision wins than does Neil Magny, but Neil Magny is undefeated in those decisions. I'm going to go with Neil Magny. I'm going to take Neil Magny to defeat John Manley by way of unanimous judges' decision. Still with the welterweights, we have Kenny Robertson taking on Brock Jardine. Now, Kenny Robertson, 11-2 in his pro career, both of those 2 career losses coming inside the octagon, being decisioned in his last fight by Aaron Simpson. Now, Kenny Robertson, 10 of his 11 pro wins have been finishes. He's got 6 knockouts and 4 submissions. His game is all about clinch striking, dirty boxing, and wrestling. Very Randy Couture-ish style. Although it is worth mentioning, Kenny Robertson has attempted 6 takedowns in the UFC and has been unsuccessful on all 6 of them. Brock Jardine, 9-2 in his pro career, lost his octagon debut being decisioned by Rick Story. 7 of his 9 pro wins have been finishes. He's got 3 knockouts and 4 submissions. Jardine's takedown defense is only 17%. Another one of these guys that only defends about 1 in 6. But he does avoid around 60% of incoming strikes. As far as I'm concerned, the way this fight's going to go, Kenny Robertson's going to throw a couple of those strikes. He's going to hit 1 or 2. He's going to finally nail one of those takedowns. On the way there, he's going to have him clinch striking, dirty boxing all day. Kenny Robertson, I'm going to give the win in this one to beat Brock Jardine by way of knockout or TKO in the 3rd round. Sticking with the prelim card, we have Sam Hands of Stone Stout taking on Carlos Fodor. Sam Stout, 18-8-1 on his pro career. He is 7-7, an even record in the UFC, being decisioned in his last fight by John Makdessi. 9 of his 18 pro wins have come by way of knockout, hence the nickname Hands of Stone. He is 8-6 when the fight goes the distance. Sam Stout's all about keeping fights standing. He's got a 77% takedown defense. Carlos Fodor, 7-2 on his pro career, making his UFC debut, but had a very good record of 5-1 in Strikeforce. Carlos Fedor was submitted in his last fight by Pat Healy. Now, both of Fedor's career losses have come by way of submission, and he trains at AMC Pankration, and that is, of course, one of the Matt Hume gyms. So he's definitely got a good training regimen in there if he's being trained under Matt Hume. That being said, I got to go with the guy that's got mountains more experience, both in terms of overall fights as well as fights in the UFC. Got to go with Sam Stout to beat Carlos Fedor by way of knockout or technical knockout inside the second round. Down to the featherweights, we have Dennis the Menace Bermudez taking on Matt Grice. And these are two guys, if you could put two mirror images of each other up against each other, it's basically Dennis Bermudez and Matt Grice. Dennis Bermudez, 9-3 on his pro career, winning record of 2-1 in the octagon. Submitted Tommy Hayden in his last fight. He is 4-0 when the fight goes to decision. He is a Div 1 NCAA wrestler. 5 of his 9 pro wins have been finishes. That's 3 knockouts and 2 submissions. Dennis Bermudez defends 83% of takedown attempts against him. He's very good at keeping the fight on his feet when he wants it there. Now, Matt Grice, 15-4 on his pro career. All 4 of his losses have come in his 6 UFC fights, and he decisioned Leonard Garcia in his last outing. Matt Grice is 5-0 when the fight goes the distance. 10 of his 15 pro wins have been finishes. That's 6 knockouts and 4 submissions. He is also a Div 1 wrestler, and Matt Grice avoids 73% of incoming strikes against him. That is a very, very big number. Ultimately, what I think this is going to come down to is, I think it's just going to come down to who's faster and who wants it more. And in both of those instances, I think I got to give a slight edge to Dennis Bermudez. I'm going to have to go with Dennis Bermudez here to beat Matt Grice by a very close and hotly contested unanimous decision. Back up to the lightweights, we have Michael Chiesa taking on Anton Koivunen. Now, Michael Chiesa, unbeaten, 8-0 on his pro career, winning his octagon debut by submitting Al Iaquinta. Now, 6 of his 8 pro wins have been submissions. They've all been chokes. I'll give you 3 guesses as to which team he fights with, and 2 of them don't count. That's right, Team Alpha Male. Now, Anton Koivunen, 17-5 in his pro career, 1-1 in the UFC. He decisioned Mitch Clark in his last fight. 12 of his 17 pro wins have been finishes. That's 4 knockouts and 8 submissions. He is 5-1 when the fight goes the distance. Koivunen trains at American Top Team, and 4 of his 5 losses have also been finishes. He's got 2 knockouts and 2 submission losses on his record. You know what? I got to see Michael Chiesa lose before I can go against him, I think, especially based on how he looked in that last fight submitting Al Iaquinta. So I'm going to have to go with Michael Chiesa here to beat Anton Koivunen, although I do think Anton Koivunen has a chance to be a contender. I don't think it's going to happen in this fight. Michael Chiesa beats Anton Koivunen by way of second round submission. And the main event of the prelim card, if you will, in the heavyweight division, Brendan the Hybrid Schaub taking on LeVar Johnson. Brendan Schaub, 8-3 on his pro career. He is 4-3 in the UFC. Currently riding 2 straight knockout losses, those coming to Ben Rothwell as well as Big Nog. Now, 7 of his 8 pro wins have also been knockouts, so kind of a live by the sword, die by the sword sort of thing. However, Brendan Schaub is a BJJ brown belt. He is a Jackson submission fighter, also trains with the Renzo Gracie combat team. LeVar Johnson, 17-6 on his pro career. He is 2-1 in the UFC. He was submitted in his last fight by Stefan Struve. 15 of his 17 pro wins have come by way of knockout. Let me repeat that in case you missed it. 15 of 17 pro wins have come by way of knockout. However, he's also been submitted in 5 of his 6 losses, so that is also a big number. He's an accurate striker. He's a clinch striker. I think he's going to try to use the clinch very, very effectively against Schaub, even though Schaub does have good knees from the clinch. I think Johnson's going to get him in the clinch. He's going to beat him up, and Brendan Schaub's going to get knocked out again. LeVar Johnson to beat Brendan Schaub by way of second round knockout or TKO. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on to the main card. At the welterweight division, we have Josh Koscheck taking on Robbie Lawler. Now Josh Koscheck, 17-6 on his pro career. All but 2 of those fights have taken place in the UFC. 15-6 record in the UFC, big numbers there, was decisioned in his last fight by Johnny Hendricks. And I'd just like to point out, the fact that he wasn't knocked out by Johnny Hendricks should say about as much as you'd need to know about Josh Koscheck. Koscheck is 7-4 when the fight goes the distance to a decision. 10 of his 17 pro wins have been finishes, even spread, 5 knockouts, 5 submissions. He is a guerrilla jiu-jitsu black belt. Robbie Lawler, 19-9-1 on his pro career, so lots of fight experience. 4-3 in the UFC, so he does have a winning record. Was decisioned in his last fight in Strikeforce by Lorenz Larkin. Now, 16 of his 19 pro wins have come by way of knockout. That's another really big number, 16 of 19. However, 5 of his 9 losses have come by way of submission, and we've seen in the past that Josh Koscheck does have the ability to submit. Robbie Lawler is 2-3 when the fight goes the distance and has an 80% takedown ratio. So 4 of every 5 takedowns that he attempts, he is landing. In what I think is going to be a close fight, is probably going to become a dirty fight. It's going to be one of these pretty well all-out brawls. I actually like Josh Koscheck in this. This is kind of rebaptism by fire here after that decision loss to Johnny Hendricks. I think Koscheck takes this one. Josh Koscheck to beat Robbie Lawler by way of unanimous judges' decision. In the welterweight division, we have Court the Crusher McGee taking on Josh the Dentist Neer. Now, Court McGee, 13-3 on his pro career. He is 3-2 in the UFC. Currently riding a 2-decision loss streak, if you will, to Nick Ring and Costa Philippou. So that's pretty decent competition there. 9 of his 13 pro wins have been finishes. He's got 2 knockouts and 7 submissions. He is a Shin Toshi red with black stripe belt. And Shin Toshi, of course, is a form of karate. Josh Neer, 33-12-1 on his pro career, 6-8 in the UFC. So he does have a losing UFC record. Was submitted in his last fight in an upset by Justin Edwards. Neer's last 11 fights have all ended in finishes. Now, he is 8-3 in those 11 fights. Josh Neer has this tendency to be in exciting fights and fights that finish. And 29 of Neer's 33 wins have been finishes themselves, 17 knockouts and 12 submissions. Josh Neer, very well-rounded, very experienced fighter. Maybe you can chalk this up to me being a bit of a Court McGee fan here. Not that I'm not a fan of Josh Neer, but I'm a pretty big Court McGee fan. I like Court McGee in this one. I'm going to take Court McGee to beat Josh Neer at welterweight by unanimous judges' decision. At the Bantamweight division, former #1 contender Urijah Faber, the California Kid, taking on the pride of El Salvador, one of my favorite fighters, Ivan Menjivar. Urijah Faber, 26-6 on his pro career. He is 2-2 in the UFC. Was decisioned in his last fight, that interim bantamweight title fight, by Burrell. Urijah Faber's 4-4 when the fight goes the distance to a decision. 14 of his 26 pro wins have come by way of submission, and he is an extremely well-rounded fighter. People like to hate on Urijah Faber. Urijah Faber is a very well-rounded dude. Now, Ivan Menjivar, 25-9 on his pro career, 4-2 in the UFC, last submitting Azamat Gashimov by Russian armbar. 6 of his 9 pro losses have come by way of decision, so when the fight goes the distance, Menjivar is only kind of 50-50 with it. But 19 of his 25 pro wins have been finishes. He's got 9 knockouts and 10 submissions. Of course, Menjivar trains at the TriStar Gym in Montreal. This one you can definitely chalk up to me being a huge Ivan Menjivar fan. I think Urijah Faber is due for a loss, for an upset loss. I think he's due to get upset, and if it's going to be Ivan Menjivar, it's going to be Ivan Menjivar, and I'm going to take that. I'm going to go with Ivan Menjivar, actually, to win this fight, to beat Urijah Faber by way of second round knockout or TKO. Co-main event light heavyweight division, Lyoto the Dragon Machida taking on Dan Henderson in what could very well be a title eliminator for the next fight with either John Jones or Chael Sonnen. Now, Lyoto Machida, 18-3 on his pro career. He is 10-3 in the UFC. Knocked out Ryan Bader in his last fight. Surprisingly, Lyoto Machida is 9-1 when the fight goes the distance. So actually a very good 3-round fighter is Machida. 9 of his 18 pro wins have been finishes, 7 knockouts and 2 submissions. Of course, we know about Machida's style, a third Dan Shotokan black belt, and is also a black belt in BJJ. Now, Dan Henderson, one of the legends of MMA, 29-8 on his pro career, 6-2 in the UFC, currently riding a 4-fight win streak, last decisioning Shogun Rua in 2011. So again, obviously, it's his first fight since 2011, so it'll be interesting to see how that tends to affect him. And before that decision win over Shogun, Henderson had knocked out 4 straight opponents, including the great Fedor Emelianenko. I don't think Dan Henderson's going to be able to catch Lyoto Machida in this fight. I think Machida's too fast for him. I would probably tend to give Henderson the strength advantage in the fight, but honestly, I just think speed kills, and Machida's speed is going to kill. I think he's going to get in and out way too quickly before Hendo can load up one of those big bombs. So Lyoto Machida to beat Dan Henderson by knockout or TKO in the 3rd round. That takes us to our main event, Women's Bantamweight Championship, the first women's fight in the history of the UFC. Rowdy Ronda Rousey defends that title against Liz Guerrilla, I guess is how you pronounce her nickname, Liz Carmouche. Now, Ronda Rousey, 6-0 on her professional career, obviously making her UFC debut, riding, of course, a 6-fight submission streak, including submission wins over high-caliber opponents. We're talking Sarah Kaufman and Miesha Tate. We all know the in-ring story of Ronda Rousey. 6 fights, 6 first-round armbars, 5 of them not even getting out of the first minute of the first round. Ronda Rousey is legit, and you do not give that girl your arm. Liz Carmouche, 8-2 on her pro career, making her UFC debut as well. Subbed Caitlin Young in her last fight, I believe in Invicta FC. 7 of her 8 pro wins have been finishes, 5 knockouts and 2 submissions. Liz Carmouche is a BJJ blue belt as well as a yellow belt in Kenpo Karate. You can't argue with success, I guess, and I would have to see Ronda Rousey lose a fight before I would be able to bet against someone that's got 6 first-round finishes. So while Liz Carmouche is no slouch and is a high-caliber opponent, I have to go with Ronda Rousey. I'm going to take Ronda Rousey to defend the Women's Bantamweight Championship by way of 2nd-round submission over Liz Carmouche. Those are the fight picks. We'll go over them here with you one more time. In the welterweight division, I have Nashawn Burrell to beat Yuri Villafort by 2nd-round knockout or TKO. Also at welterweight, I have Neil Magny to defeat John Manley by unanimous judges' decision. At welterweight, I have Kenny Robinson to knock out or TKO Brock Jardine in the 3rd round. At lightweight, I have Sam Stout to beat Carlos Fedor by knockout or technical knockout in the 2nd round. At featherweight, I have Dennis Bermudez to get a unanimous decision victory over Matt Grice. Also at lightweight, I have Michael Chiesa to submit Anton Koivunen in the 2nd round. And the last fight on the prelim card, I have LeVar Johnson to KTFO Brendan Schaub in the 2nd round. Main card, welterweight, we have Josh Koscheck with a unanimous judges' decision victory over Robbie Lawler. At welterweight, I have Court McGee beating Josh Neer, also by unanimous judges' decision. And the bantamweight division, I have Ivan Menjivar to upset Urijah Faber by 2nd round knockout or TKO. Co-main event, light heavyweight division, I have Lyoto Machida to knock out or TKO Dan Henderson in the 3rd round. And in the main event, Women's Bantamweight Championship, I have Ronda Rousey to defend her title by submitting Liz Carmouche in the 2nd round. Those are the fight picks. Want to hear your fight picks? Send them below in the comments section. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Enjoy the fights on Saturday.